Hello everyone! Sethos' kit has finally been officially revealed in the Genshin 4.7 livestream, and he will be releasing alongside Cloran's and Alhaitham's banners in the first half of the patch. His kit didn't really get touched throughout the 4.7 beta cycle, but we do have some new knowledge from updated theory crafting about how to optimize his gameplay. So I wanted to cover these findings and sum up everything about Sethos in one final guide. I will be covering how Sethos works, the best ways to build him, his potential best teams, and analyzing his place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. Pretty much everything you need to know with simple and practical explanations, while also giving more detailed analysis that is backed by TC. So with that, let's get right into it. Sethos is a 4-star Electro Bow main DPS that ascends with Elemental Mastery. Typically, Bow DPS characters revolve around either charged attacking or normal attacking as their main source of damage. For instance, Lenny relies on charged attacks and HOYOMiX relies on normal attacks. Sethos is unique because he's the first Bow character released with a kit that allows for either playstyle to deal damage, having even the option of combining both charged attack and normal attack gameplay in a rotation. The game considers both of his playstyles to deal charged attack damage, whether you do aim shots or spam normal attacks, so keep that in mind when considering his builds. With an emphasis on charged attacks and normal attacks, his normal talent is a core part of his kit. There are only two main multipliers you need to worry about. First is the normal 3-hit combo. These are nothing special, just regular bow normal attacks, but these multipliers will be used in Sethos' normal attack playstyle in combination with his burst, which we'll get to later. The second multiplier is his shadow piercing shot. This is his fully charged piercing aim shot that has both attack and EM scaling. Now normally this charge shot takes 6 seconds to fully charge. If that sounds horrible, then you would be right. Thankfully, both of Sethos' combat passives buff his shadow piercing shot. First, his A1 passive. In my opinion, the wording of this is pretty convoluted, so all you need to know about this passive is this. If Sethos has at least 20 energy, the time to charge his shadow piercing shot is reduced from 6 seconds to 0.3 seconds. And once you fire the shot, this energy is consumed. So Sethos spends 20 energy for a quick shotgun style charge shot, similar to how Tainari plays. Next, Sethos' A4 passive massively increases the damage of his shadow piercing shots. With this A4, Sethos gains a buff which is indicated by an hourglass symbol next to his character model. This buff increases the EM multiplier of up to 4 of his shadow piercing shots by 700% EM each. Once you charge shot 4 times or let the timer on the buff run out, the buff will refresh after 15 seconds. To summarize what this means for Sethos' gameplay, if you're planning to play Sethos for his quick charge shots, you're just going to do 4 of them, then swap out because his A4 passive only gives the extra 700% EM on a maximum of 4 shadow piercing shots. And remember that with his A1 passive, this will cost a total of 80 energy to make sure the charge time is very quick. And lastly, since we covered his A1 and A4 passive already, Sethos' special passive displays Sumeru specialty resources on your map. All of this that I've explained so far is for a charged attack playstyle, so let's move on to Sethos' normal attack playstyle, which is enabled with his burst. With a 60 energy cost and a 15-second cooldown, Sethos' burst enhances his normal attacks into dusk bolts for 8 seconds. These dusk bolts deal electro damage, pierce through enemies, have an added EM multiplier, and are considered charged attack damage. Remember that this last point is just a label of the type of damage Sethos deals. Calculation-wise, Sethos' burst just adds the EM multiplier to each of his normal attack string, so each of his enhanced normals with his burst will have both attack and EM scaling. In summary, Sethos' burst makes him play like HOYOMiX, enhancing and infusing his normal attacks until the buff is over. Both of Sethos' playstyles require energy, making his kit pretty energy reliant. Fortunately, his skill helps alleviate this issue. After using his skill, Sethos deals electro damage in front of him and moves backwards. If this triggers an electro-related reaction, Sethos recovers an additional 12 energy on top of 2 electro particles created from using your skill. The skill doesn't have an EM scaling and always recovers 12 extra energy regardless of level, so you can technically leave this talent alone at level 1 and it will still serve its purpose of generating energy for Sethos. In terms of which talents you should level first, for a charged attack focused playstyle, you'll want to just level his normal attack. You can ignore his burst. You can level his skill if you want, but it's not that important. For a normal attack playstyle that is enhanced with his burst, skill is obviously last, but the main question is whether you should level his burst or normal talent because his dusk bolts use multipliers from both talents. I've done some very quick and crude math on this and my conclusion is it depends. If we're assuming no party buffs at all and average Sethos stats, his normal talent is a little bit better because he does still scale off attack. However, at higher levels of EM, for instance if you use Nahida and you use Nahida's burst, then leveling Sethos' burst starts to come out ahead. If you want a simple no-brain answer for this, you're safe to level each of the talents equally. Next, as a 4-star Constellations constellations can be very kit defining, so let's go over Sethos' constellations. C1 increases the crit rate of his shadow piercing shots by 15%, nice for charged attack gameplay. C2 gives Sethos up to 30% electro damage bonus as long as he does 2 of the following: consume energy when performing an aim shot, recover energy by triggering an electro related elemental reaction with his skill, and uses burst. In both the charged attack playstyle and the normal attack playstyle, you will meet 2 of these conditions, so this constellation just gives Sethos 30% electro damage bonus, which is actually really good because he doesn't have inherent damage bonus in his kit. C3 increases his normal talent by 3, which is nice for both charged attack and normal attack playstyles. C4 gives ADM to the party for 10 seconds if Sethos' shadow piercing shot or dusk bolt hits 2 or more enemies, which is okay but not the best. C5 increases Sethos' burst talent by 3 levels, which is good for the normal attack playstyle. And lastly, C6 pretty much gives 1 free shadow piercing shot every rotation. You can do 1 fast charge shot that doesn't cost any energy every 15 seconds. And honestly, for a Constellation 6 on the 4-star, this is pretty underwhelming. We have plenty of examples where a 4-star strength massively increases with their Constellation 6. Sethos' C6 isn't one of those constellations. Sure, a free shadow piercing shot is cool and adds some extra damage with no extra energy, but overall it's not a huge damage increase. And honestly, that's a great thing. Having 4-stars with a lot of their strength locked at C6 is pretty annoying since it's so hard to pull specific 4-stars you want on banners. A less constellation reliant 4-star is great, giving Sethos more accessibility. Really, his strongest constellation is his C2 because of the electro damage bonus, but other than that, you don't really need his other constellations. With his kit details out of the way, I think the biggest question to answer about Sethos is which playstyle is better, charged attack or enhanced normal attacks with his burst? The correct answer is whichever you like more and what you find fun. But if we just focus on the damage between the 2 playstyles, we can see that there is a winner. I did the math comparing the total attack and EM multipliers of 4 shadow piercing shots in a charged attack focus rotation and a 3 N3s plus an N2 normal attack rotation enhanced with his burst. The summary of my math and assumptions are shown here, pause if you want to take a closer look, and we can see that the normal attack playstyle with burst provides a significantly larger total multiplier in a rotation compared to the charged attack playstyle. Now this result itself doesn't necessarily mean it's better because it doesn't consider team DPS, and one of the perks of the charged attack rotation is that Sethos' on-field presence is much lower, allowing for other teammates to take the field. Other theory crafter calculations that I've seen, however, seem to show that the normal attack playstyle does still do more damage overall, with them assuming 7 N2s as the optimized rotation instead, which if it works in practice will result in even more damage. Overall, both playstyles have their pros and cons, but the normal attack playstyle seems to be the more optimal, at least according to the sheets. One last thing I want to point out is that because the normal attack playstyle only requires 60 energy compared to 80, you can potentially fit 120 energy shadow piercing shot to fit in more damage, which would result in a hybrid playstyle where Sethos' optimal combo is both using charged attacks and normal attacks. Personally, however, I think you should only do this if you have C6 when the 1 shadow piercing shot costs 0 energy. To wrap up the discussion of Sethos' different playstyles, here are the general rotations for both of them. For a charged attack focused playstyle, just set up support skills, then shoot 4 shadow piercing shots on Sethos, casting a skill in between to regain enough energy. Once you finish rapid firing 4 of them, you can refresh support skills, on field a secondary DPS, or Sethos charged attack even more if you really want to. Then you can loop back to the beginning. In a normal attack focused playstyle, you would set up your supports, burst on Sethos, normal attack twice, then cancel the animation with your skill, which gives you the energy and helps activate C2, then continue on with your enhanced normal attacks. You can end your uptime with another skill to gain energy and potentially a shadow piercing shot, especially with C6. Then you can loop back to your supports. Next, let's talk about his best weapon choices. Because Sethos scales off both attack and EM, stats like crit and damage percent are especially valuable because they affect both the attack scaling portion and the EM scaling portion. There's several good 5-star stat sticks that will be solid on him, like Skyward Harp, Aqua Simulacra, Amos Bow, and the First Great Magic. You can choose any of these and it will be good, but the one that looks the best to me is Hunter's Path, which makes sense because it's the EM based one because of Tainari. For 4-star weapons, both Battle Pass weapons look good, especially the newer one, Scion of the Blazing Sun, that gives extra damage percent to charged attack damage. For free-to-play weapons, you have a decent amount of options. If you're an older player, Windbloom Ode exists, Ibis Piercer is another good event weapon option. There's even a new free 4-star event weapon coming with patch 4.7 that is designed with Sethos in mind. EM substat and even more EM when the holder uses energy. Even the 3-star weapon Slingshot is a great option since it gives both crit and damage percent, exactly the best stats for Sethos. As for artifact sets, Wanderer's Troop will be his overall best set. No matter the playstyle, Sethos deals charge attack damage so he takes advantage of the 4-piece, and 2-piece EM is great for an EM scaler. Another option is Gilded, gives EM and attack, which is good. If you're considering for arena teams, as always, Marachuse Hunter is an option. 4-piece TF is a consideration, however with the normal attack focus rotation I showed earlier, you're not really going to be taking advantage of lowering Sethos' skill cooldown for extra skills, and the main point of having extra skills is more energy, but if you just burst and normal tech, you only need need 60 energy, and the rotation I outlined can easily fit 2 already, so I personally wouldn't recommend 4-piece TF and would suggest you focus on a purely damage-oriented set like Wanderer's Troop. The artifact stats you should build is very simple. EM Sands, Electro Damage Goblet, Crit Circlet. Substats prioritize Crit, then EM, then Attack and ER are both good. As for ER recommendations, depends on how much energy you are willing to spend on the rotation. Assuming you run Official and have Electro Resonance, you can build no energy recharge and still have enough energy if you just use your 60 cost burst. However, you can decide to spend 80 energy like in the charged attack rotation where you might need ER. So the overall range is looking like 100% low end, which I think is ideal, just forget about ER and focus on damage, to potentially about 140% high end. Lastly, let's cover Sethos' best teams. As an Electro main DPS that scales off EM like Sino, he pretty much has 2 team options, Aggravate or Hyperbloom, ideally with a second off-field Electro teammate with him. Like every other on-field Electro DPS, C6 Fischl is heavily recommended and she will be in his best performing teams. Pretty simple team building thought process, though the character options can depend on the playstyle you choose for Sethos. Aggravate teams are pretty much the same for both charged attack and normal attack oriented playstyles. The typical core of Nahida, Fischl, and Kazuha will always be a great option for Aggravate. However, as a bow character, Sethos really wants a shield so he doesn't get interrupted during his attacks, so I think using Baiju or Kirara over Nahida will be recommended for him. And in Aggravate, replacing Nahida isn't too much of an issue because the reaction doesn't require her level of Dendro application. As always, you can always replace Fischl with Yair Beidou and Kazuha with Sucrose. Now for specifically the charged attack playstyle where you can have more downtime on Sethos, you could use characters like Tainari or Yai, maybe even both in the same team if you want to experiment for fun, to fill that downtime up. In these teams, after Sethos is finished unloading his charged attacks, you can on-field with your secondary carry until you're ready to cycle back to Sethos. For Hyperbloom oriented teams, you have several options. You can go a Farina based team with Baiju. You won't get too many Hyperblooms with this though, so you'll mainly be relying on Aggravate alongside Farina's buff and damage. You can also have your Hydro unit be an off-field healer like Kokomi or Seedreen, allowing you to slot in Nahida. Again, not too many Hyperblooms in this case because both Kokomi and Seedreen don't have too much Hydro application. These two types of teams work for any playstyle, but for the normal attack oriented playstyle, you can have the Hydro unit be Yelan or Xingqiu since you can actually proc their burst for off-field Hydro application. Using them alongside Nahida and Fischl, you get a healerless team that will actually proc a good amount of Hyperblooms. To conclude this Sethos guide, I wanted to share my analysis on his place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. Sethos is a 4-star on-field main DPS, and typically 4-star DPSs aren't the greatest, especially when compared to C0 limited 5-star characters. Because of this, in terms of overall pull value, I wouldn't recommend pulling on a limited banner just for one specific 4-star main DPS unless you really like them. Comparing Sethos to limited 5-star DPSs is a bit unfair though, so how does he fare among the other 4-star main DPSs? Currently, he looks pretty good and promising. If I were to make a comparison, I think his strength as a 4-star DPS is similar to Gaming, which I think overall people consider good for a 4-star main DPS. And I would say Sethos is better because his damage is not gated behind C6 like Gaming is, and Sethos' gameplay will be less awkward and easier to play than timing Gaming's plunges for the proper reactions. So in terms of 4-star DPSs, Sethos is pretty good. Even in the worst case scenario, Sethos just serves as another Hyperbloom enabler since he's an Electro EM scaler, and honestly, I think that's still fine since I think we all know how strong a Hyperbloom team can be. Although he doesn't introduce any new team archetypes, he is still unique because he is the first bow DPS that can focus on charged attack playstyle, focus on a normal attack playstyle, or combine the two, and I think that's pretty cool. So if you're planning on pulling for Chlorand or Alhaitham in this patch and happen to get Sethos as a 4-star, give the guy a chance. That's everything I wanted to cover about Sethos. I hope this guide and analysis was helpful to you all in giving you a better understanding of everything related to Sethos. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video and want to see more guides like this on future characters. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.